sorry, this is just like the worst thing that they've ever done. Like the
I know the time. It's ridiculous.
It's the worst thing they could have ever done.
It's criminal, actually.
I have never seen
God.
a greater downgrade in an application so fundamental to the utility of this device.
Yeah.
Like it's ridiculous. There's no reason to have a recents on the timers.
Yeah. No, it's absurd.
Like
it's
I
absurd.
need like it
Okay.
saves me the 1 second.
Okay.
Go.
Okay,
Let's go. We're still on a time crunch.
I actually might keep that in because I just want to really drive home to the listener how much I despise the Apple.
I do not believe that is necessarily.
I think it's vital to the 6th season review episode.
No. He's absolutely right. It's unbelievable. Like if we're being completely honest, I've never like been more frustrated before by like an update to the phone.
Yeah, listener, what do you think of the iPhone timer update with how they do the timer? I mean, honestly, just leave it in the comments on YouTube or Spotify. We honestly might do a poll about this thing. Anyways, okay.
Y'all, I will commandeer this introduction if we don't get started.
For movies, music, books, and more, join Keilan, Noah, and George, your ultimate entertainment hub. Welcome to the Everything Club.
Okay, let's get this started. Yeah, I am Keilan Morrissey. I am joined today with George Mitrev and Noah Boeyink. We are your 3 humble hosts of the Everything Club, our podcast where we discuss everything in terms of pop culture, entertainment, and art. Today we are discussing Stick Season, We'll All Be Here Forever, the album by Noah Kahan, which he released a couple years ago, really shot him onto the scene. And George and I have liked Noah Kahan for some time, and Noah, we recently looped him in on this album. Very recently, actually.
Quite literally yesterday at the time of recording.
But no, you're familiar with some of Noah's older stuff, like Young Blood and some of those songs?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I never... I mean, this is just how I am with music anyway. I don't necessarily anymore go out and listen to a specific song or like specific style of music. It's just whatever's on, and
Right.
I've definitely heard his stuff on.
Okay, yeah. Because he's had a few like radio hits over the years. But this album really like just catapulted him to success. But before we dive into that, I want to ask my good man Noah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I've never had a better day in my life. George, why don't you go?
Is that true, Noah?
Not even a little bit. I want to quit my job.
Well, I heard the scoop earlier, but would you like to give the listener an abridged version?
I don't know how much detail I can go into about this because I don't know.
Legally speaking?
Yeah, legally speaking. But the job site that I'm currently working on, listener, is in complete and utter metaphorical shambles. The building is up, but that's really it. I mean, everything's going wrong. It's not a good time. And I just found out I'm going to be there until the job is done, which is awesome.
Fun. Delightful.
George, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing relatively good. The last couple of days have been quite fun. We've all all of our hosts of the Everything Club podcast were in fact out for a little mini vacation together. It was a really fun time, and it was definitely a much needed break from my job as well, which is pushing a very aggressive timeline. But it will all be worth it in the end because it's very apparent what that aggressive timeline will do. So it's very rewarding to see, in theory, when it all comes together.
Being an adult is stressful, and I don't like it.
Dang.
Those are profound words from our co-host, Noah Boeyink.
Yeah, man. No, our trip was super fun. It was this lake trip that we do. The Morrissey family and George and Noah came along. We didn't do much on the lake. It actually completely rained out, and we
didn't do anything on the lake.
Yeah.
It's not that we didn't do much. We did nothing.
No, yeah, we existed near the lake, which was a good time. But yeah, it was a crazy thunderstorm. We weren't able to do much. But yeah, it was a good time. And something that we did on our last day there, on our drive back, was listen to Stick Season, We'll All Be Here Forever by Noah Kahan, which was pretty sick. We literally driving around like a mountainside on like one of those like winding roads and playing like the first track off of Stick Season was like one of the most epic memories of the weekend, in my opinion.
I believe that song is Northern Attitude.
Northern Attitude, that's right. Yes. All right, well, shall we get into our first slice of bread, boys, our light question round?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, glad to hear that we're sticking to the structure that we've sworn upon. So Noah, let me hit you with this question. So Noah Kahan here, I just realized we got a double Noah going on the pod today.
Yeah, I've realized this a lot. It's gonna get real confusing for me.
So Noah, what are your thoughts on Noah? Okay, my question is this. Noah Kahan created an album that really encapsulates the feel of his hometown and his the place of his upbringing, which is a town in Vermont. He has a lot of lyrics that speak to the nature and this particular season of nature in Vermont. And so I wanted to ask you, if you were to make a folksy, naturalistic album of some kind, what nature that you've experienced in your life would you draw inspiration from? Could be a place, could be a season. What in nature would speak to you so much that it would make it into your album?
Okay, so one of the, like, if we're talking like strictly season, you know, like fall, or as the or like the not official, unofficial season of like spooky season has always played a big part, especially in my life, especially like with my dad, because he, like, that's one of the biggest things that we were able to bond over was our love for Halloween. And that might have been something he instilled on me, but still, you know, like that, I think, like, we talked about this on the lake trip too, a little insider on the lake trip. But like, just like the leaves changing and like the air cooling down, and, you know, all that stuff that gets associated with fall and autumn is so, it's always nostalgic for me. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that way, but that's just, that would be the main driving force of an album that I would create, would be like that. And I have a feeling it would sound very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not hearing any like rocks, like hard rock songs about fall.
Love that autumn breeze.
So, yeah, I guess that would be it. Mainly like changing of colors, fall time, autumn, you know, all that, all the stuff that comes with that.
Totally.
George.
Yes.
Thank you for acknowledging me. Okay, what song do you feel you most identify with?
In stick season?
Yes.
Okay.
The album that we are talking
clarifying. Oh my gosh.
Hey, you know how this episode is about one album? I'm going to ask you about the song in a completely different album. That has nothing to do with what we're doing
Maybe
today.
there was a follow-up to the question. Maybe
You can see my laptop. That is it, my guy.
Well, I don't know that. Maybe you had the follow-up in your head. But regardless, I would say that a lot of it's difficult to answer that question because we haven't really established which album that we're actually talking about yet. Because
how about this bass album? Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mentioned it because Noah Kahan has definitely released, I think, at least 3 versions of the same album.
Well, here, let me hit you with this track list. The one that I'm sort of focusing on is "We'll All Be Here Forever," which is, it has like 5 extra songs from the original. You can, I mean, you know, it's up to Noah how you want to approach the question, but I can hit you with this track list here.
You can answer, I guess, with any of them. However, the research that I did was just on the bass album, because I forgot which one we said.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I would definitely say then everything, or Everywhere, Everything.
Yes.
I think that song
song
is absolutely gorgeous in a lot of the way that it is like written, and it's the way that it's like presented to the listener, both in terms of like the sound design, which is a very underrated part of this album, the depth that we should definitely be talking about today, but also because of just the amount of general relatability that it has in terms of like describing the situation that we all found ourselves in, inside of like it seems almost that you could relate it to everything. You could relate it to like the pandemic. You could relate it to like any given like time where you're feeling a little bit lost in your personal life. I thought that like a lot of the imagery that was being displayed like throughout the song was almost unbelievably poetic. In terms of how you could see it kind of like you could see the imagery and you could see the words themselves like in my case like touching like the inside of my heart in terms of like how I can relate to it and how I can feel the words and not just listen to them.
Bro, I have on my planner, listener that I just pulled out, on the back of my planner, I have a sticker of lyrics from that very song.
That's crazy.
Till our fingers decompose, I'll keep my hand in yours. I think it's boom. I think it is a classic love song
Air
to a
fist bump.
degree. Oh
Air
yeah.
fist bump.
And yeah, very poetic as you said. I agree.
So that would definitely be my answer to that.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Respect.
Hey, Keilan.
Yes, George.
If you were to design an album much like Stick Season, this album has a lot more of that kind of like acoustic, more like folksy like atmosphere to it.
Totally.
Is there a different kind of like musical approach that you would take to it other than that traditional like almost at this point Noah Kahan-esque, because he's so integrated himself within this kind of like musical style? Is there a style that you personally would like prefer more if you were to try to make an album like this?
I guess, what do you mean by an album like this? Like something that's thematically similar? Like if I was to make my own version of Stick Season, would I alter the sound? Or what do you mean an album like that?
Interesting. You would approach the question differently. If you were to make an album similar to Stick Season in terms of like the message that you were trying to portray.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like
Sure.
if you were to redesign this album, keep the general thoughts of each song the same, is there like a different kind of musical like approach that you would take?
Okay.
That you think would that would resonate more like either with you or with like the more general or like different publics or different like demographics?
Okay, I got you. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, yeah, the reason I asked for clarification is because I think that Stick Season, the album, it is very beautiful and poignant because it is what it is, and it's done in Noah Kahan's style. And so I wouldn't want to erase that or replace it with any different sound. But if I were to do it, just with me being a poet and a lover of hip hop and spoken word and those genres, I think it would be really interesting to see these sounds or these themes replicated in more of a poetic style of like spoken word delivery. I think because even when he did the his the third variation of this album, which I know we're not like reviewing today, but he had on all these other artists that were very similar in sound to him. He had Hosier and he had I think it was it Lizzie McAlpine or was it Gracie Abrams, or both of them maybe? He had artists who were also very folksy and had his sort of kind of sound. But I think to bring on artists like Joshua Luke Smith, which I know is probably not on the radar of some of our listeners because he's a UK based hip hop artist who he's a friend of mine and a mentor, and he's phenomenal. But to have on artists like him, or to give a more mainstream example, maybe like Loyal Carner would be another artist, like a emotional hip hop artist. I think to bring on that kind of style would be really cool to try to convey some of these themes. So that's probably what I'd go with, and I think it could be done. I actually, in some of my own poetry, I actually have a poem called The Leaves, which is a fall-centric poem. So I actually have attempted to do this to a degree. So that's what I would do. I realize, boys, we're getting pretty deep with these light questions.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Hey Noah.
Yeah, what's up?
If Stick Season were a flavor of ice cream, what flavor would it be?
There we go.
Oh. Okay. Mint chip.
That's a fantastic answer.
That is.
I'm not going to elaborate. Keelan.
No, it makes sense. I got it. Yeah, totally. Yeah, bring it on.
If Stick Season was
an ice cream flavor? No way, y'all had the same question.
He stole it from me. If Stick Season coincided with a holiday, what holiday would you associate it with?
Well, I feel like the answer of Halloween is a bit on the nose because there is a track called Halloween. But
oh my god,
if I really think about it, let me see.
I can't wait for that to barely show up on the audio.
I mean, because technically the Stick Season that he is describing is in between fall and winter. So if I were to like literally think about it, it would be more so like the Thanksgiving era, because that's when things are kind of more like brown and not like full lush fall, but more this like kind of dirty, mucky in between fall and winter, which is what he's describing. But he also does touch on Halloween, as we said. So for me, I associate the sound of the album with Halloween, but I would associate some of like the visuals and the actual essence of it maybe more so with like the Thanksgiving time of year. In like November would be my answer.
So he's in his Thanksgiving era.
I think he's in his Thanksgiving era, Noah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Anyways, I haven't asked you one yet, George.
You're right.
All right. Let me throw one at you, and then we'll dive into our main segment, boys. Who is an artist? What, we good?
I'm like the sneeze is like right there, and it's now going away.
Listener, I'm so sorry for that interruption.
That's going in. I mean, guarantee it.
There's no way I can even edit that out. That's just unsalvageable at that point.
Now I'm just gonna sneeze. Whatever. I'm not even gonna hold up my finger to get you guys to try and stop.
George, who is a more niche creator?
Achoo!
Oh my God. Could be an artist, could be a writer, could be an actor, could be anyone. A creator who you would like to see have a Noah Kahan level rise in popularity.
Ooh, that is a very good question.
Uh-oh.
I believe that the quick answer would probably be Quinn 92. I think that he's already had that little bit of that incline, but I think it's very like Noah Kahan-esque, where he had a couple of songs that really kind of like put him on everybody's radar.
Yeah.
But he hasn't exploded in the same way that Noah Kahan did with Stick Season.
Yeah.
So I think that if Quinn 92 had this kind of moment, I would be incredibly happy. We've also been listening to him for quite a bit of time.
Sure.
His music has always been very interesting and very important.
Totally.
To me.
Because he's had a lot of big hits, but he hasn't had like one album that just totally shook the world. I feel like that'd be awesome if he had an album that just took the world by storm.
I think that almost every big artist that I can think of has had that one like breakthrough album.
Yeah.
Which like even if they built a steady audience over time, having that one kind of singular album that explodes is definitely like that is their like almost like staple of like I am in the mainstream now. People know about me because of this one thing. Even if like you build up that like direct thing over time, I think that if you have that album explosion, that it definitely like solidifies the fact that you are on the mainstream.
Totally. Yeah, we love Quinn. He's awesome. All right, boys. Either of you have just well, Noah. Let me ask you actually, because I know you've heard bits and pieces of this album, such as the song "Stick Season," which was the big breakthrough, like a couple years back, and I'm sure you've heard bits and pieces of Noah Kahan in my car at various points. But,
most definitely. Yes.
But I want to ask, having listened to the album from start to finish yesterday on our drive, what are your initial takeaways?
So, when it comes to music for me, one thing that I'm discovering more and more about myself the more I listen to music, I don't like loud in-your-face music. And this is like perfect for that. You know, like a lot of it was very, like George said earlier, and I have in my notes, it's very acoustic.
Yeah.
You know, it makes really good background music if you need it to. You know, like you can listen to it on its own, but you can also still enjoy it while you're doing something else.
Sure.
Like it's not the main task that you're doing, and I love that. A lot of other music that I hear, especially on the job sites, it's like it's really, really loud.
Aggressive.
Aggressive. That's a good term for it. So this really hit a spot for me that I think I've been not necessarily needing, but that I've like been looking for in terms of the music that I'm finding myself to enjoy more and more. Like I mentioned this at the lake trip, like a song was it Golden Hour by Jake.
Yeah.
I think it's yeah. That is one of my favorite songs, and that is like a very it's similar to this. It's a very like acoustic, mellow and like nature-y type song. Like that is what I am finding myself to enjoy more and more. And damn near every song in this album, or at least in the bass album that I listen to, fits into that category. So overall, I really, really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I completely agree. It is an album that it has the term of the weekend that we were using was polyamorous. It ebbs and flows in its intensities, which I think is cool. And it like you said, it's not an aggressive album. It's not an album that is super in your face. It can be very mellow, very laid back, but it has its moments where it builds, and certain songs are a little more poppy, a little more loud, and some are more quiet and understated, but it also has songs that are both. And I'm trying to think. Your Needs, My Needs is a song that I think was one of the additions on We'll All Be Here Forever, where the first like 3/4 of the song is very mellow and slow, and then he just kind of hits you with like blasts you with some rock in like the last quarter, which I think is cool. I think it's cool. So it is very good in that regard.
Yeah, it really goes on that like it back and forth like that, because in View Between Villages, there's just like a whole minute of silence at the end, like after he says like the last line, like I'm back between villages and everything's still. It's just like very mellow, soft music, and like no lyrics or anything, really emphasizing that it's like still. It's like that imagery that I like to imagine when I'm listening. It's really good for me.
Yeah. I just realized something, that the View Between Villages, I've never articulated this before, but the song flows like you're driving over like a mountain or like a hill. And he references that in the song. He's like, I'm over the hill, kind of like he's like driving back into his hometown is kind of how I envision it. And the song has that flow. Like it starts mellow, it builds, it gets really high, and then it goes back down. And it kind of feels like you're driving over a hill, which is interesting.
It's over the bridge, but
or over the bridge. Okay, well maybe that's just how I've imagined it. George, what are your main like overarching thoughts on the album?
So this album, I think, is unique in my mind because of its homogeneous feel.
Ooh,
so
it's $1 million word.
What I mean by that is that this album has consistent musical like themes and motifs that persist across the songs.
True.
You are very much listening to a Stick Season song. Like you can pick out any one song out of this album, play it in isolation, and someone could be like, oh yeah, this is from Stick Season. Because all of those like themes and all of those ways that he has made the music appear so much like so similar to each other, they become like a cohesive whole. And this isn't something that we always see in every album. There's certainly different like musical themes that go across different albums, but I think that this album takes it a step further when like while we were listening to this music as we were driving, it became incredibly apparent that all of these songs had that same energy and had that same atmosphere without being so similar that it felt like you were listening to the same thing every single.
That's
like,
what I was about to say.
Yeah, that is a great way of putting it too.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, I'm sure, for artists to make a project that is cohesive and so distinct sonically that doesn't feel like just one long song, Because like you're saying, like every song on Stick Season, like even just hearing the instrumental, like you can tell, okay, this is different than his previous albums. Like this is its own thing, which is really cool that he established that sound.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. I also think that he put a lot of, this is going to sound so cheesy, but he put a lot of himself into the song. You could tell that, like, even with regard to, like, his previous work, which was definitely more on I would argue that it's more on the pop side. It was definitely still, like, had that, like, folksy atmosphere, but it was, like, especially, like, certain songs in, like, Busy Head, for example, which is another album that I extremely like from him.
Yeah, Busy Head's great.
They are definitely designed to be pop songs.
Yeah.
I would argue that there are definitely songs that I can pick out of that album, which I say, okay, this is an artist trying to make it big. This is somebody who's creating these songs with those same, like, ideas, but approaching it from the lens of, let me make a pop song that's going to be played on the radio and be like a lot more popular and like more like put me on the map kind of a deal. And that's definitely what it did.
Yeah.
This album, I would argue, is like has that same underlying presence of that motivation, but it doesn't necessarily approach it as much from like the musical sense. Yeah. I think that this album was definitely more of that folksy atmosphere that I've come to appreciate, and a little bit less of let me make a pop song that is going to get like 250 million listens on Spotify, even though that is definitely what has happened anyway.
Yeah.
I think that maybe the motivation of at least creating the music, not necessarily creating the music, but like while the process was underway, the actual like writing of everything and the composing of the different instruments and things like that, I think that more touched towards that like core artist than it did that
commercial
musician.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember watching this interview with Ed Sheeran on Apple TV where Zane Lowe interviewed him, and he kind of talked about how there's really two types of songs you can make. There's and it's what you just described. There's like fully uncompromised artistic melodies that is like, I'm going to write a song about what I want to write a song about. And there's commercial ones. There's like, and Ed Sheeran describes how he's learned how to write both. Like Shape of You is a song that he wrote that to be a pop hit. He wrote that to be like the song of the summer, and it was. And he said that those types of songs...
Over 3 billion listens on Spotify. Or something.
Jesus.
Crazy.
I think it's approaching 4, actually.
Oh, my God. And those songs, he said, you can write 20 of those songs in a day, basically. But for songs that are heavier than that, I mean, he has a song called, like, on his last project called End of Youth that's literally about, like... well, it's about the end of his youth. It's about his maturity as a person and about the loss of innocence and things like that. And those are like words that you pay for. Like those are words that you have to go through things. You have to get to a point of being able to put that into words and say it in a way that's so true to you. And I think that Noah Kahan definitely did that with these songs. And George has shown me that Shape of You has 3... That's a billion, right? 3,988,000,000 streams.
Oh my God.
That's insanity. But I also just wanted to add that on Stick Season, the 2 songs that I thought were the most kind of like pop-esque hits, I actually really like, which is Stick Season and Dial Drunk. I think they were intended to be the more mainstream ones, but yet they don't feel like compromises somehow. They're catchy and and everything, but they also feel very authentic to him. And he has some very vulnerable lyrics on both of those songs. And I think that is a very impressive balance to strike, in my opinion. How about, do we want to throw out any particular songs that we like? Or?
Oh, I do have a list of the ones I tended to enjoy the most.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Northern Attitude.
Hell yeah.
The first one, Stick Season. The song New Perspective.
Yes.
All My Love, and The View Between Villages.
Yes.
So those are all the ones that I can see myself like going back to and actively wanting to listen to, which is big for me.
New Perspective is definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah. Man. What was it? All My Love is one that I remember remarking to George as we were listening to it. Like, this one gets slept on. This one's really good.
It does.
And I know, like, when I first listened to the album, I don't think I threw that one on my playlist, but now that I've gone back to it, I'm like, yeah, this one's a banger. Yeah, I'm looking at the lyrics now. God, that is a good song.
One of the most interesting things to me is like in The View Between Villages.
Yeah.
It is 4 stanzas of lyrics in a 3-minute song. Like totally.
Yeah. No, I saw that with Strawberry Wine as well. I was looking back at the lyrics, and I mean, you can read those lyrics as if you're speaking. You can read those in like 25 seconds, you know? Like it's a short.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's like a poem. But it's so good. It's so good.
I think that's another part of it. Like you said, some of them you can read them like they're a poem.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I know that's kind of how songs go generally, like, you know, like the rhyming scheme sometimes and that, which I guess rhyming isn't that big of a thing in music anymore. But I think that also helped it feel a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
You know, was like the tempo that he did it at felt like he was reading a poem, but like to music.
Sure.
Sometimes.
Yeah, like when he said the line, I said love is fast asleep on a dirt road with your head on my shoulder. The way he says that, it's like he's just sighing it out. It's like the way that there are points where he's singing, but it just feels like he's speaking. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that was something. Yeah, just how short some of the songs are, but also how long some of the songs are. Like most songs are over 4 minutes, which is crazy to me.
That's true. Yeah.
And like some of them even go up like damn near 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, the songs, like, they spend enough time kind of getting to know themselves and developing like kind of an atmosphere within the song, which is cool.
Yeah. It's a good range of, because it's a good range of length of each song, or
Totally.
like the length of the songs, because like I said, I think the shortest one is like 3 minutes and like 15 seconds or something like that, around there, and then the longest one I think is like 4 minutes and 58 seconds.
Yeah. And there's also 4 minutes 58. Yeah. There's the view.
Oh, I got that right. Let's go.
The View Between Villages extended version is right around there.
There's an extended version?
So the last, I don't know if we listened to it, but the last song on the album is the extended version, which has like, he actually samples what I think is conversations with his grandparents. And he has like some lines from them, and they're talking about growing up there and how they've literally always lived there. I haven't listened to it in a while because it is a longer track, but his grandma is saying something like, "Oh, I've never been a big city girl. I've just always had what I've needed right here," that kind of sentiment.
I think so, and I think in like the bass version, I mean, that's the extended version. That's not in the bass version. I didn't listen to the extended version.
Okay.
I think if I were to hear that now, like maybe after we finish recording,
Sure.
That might shoot up on my favorites list, because like that makes it feel all the more personal, where you bring in your own family members telling a nice like story, telling them about their lives. That's what I love. It's a life story.
Absolutely.
And being able to just get a glimpse of that while in a song about someone else's life story.
Yeah.
Or how they're choosing to tell where and how they grew up. That makes it feel a lot more personal to me, and I really love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's unpack a little bit of that kind of overarching story of the album, because I mean, it's called "We'll All Be Here Forever" is this version of the album, and it's, I mean, I would say that some of the main themes are like home, your memories of home, returning home, being stuck home. Like there's "Homesick," which is a song about feeling like you can never get out of this town, like it's kind of trapped you and it's just kind of stuck in one place, and there's "You're Gonna Go Far," which is about someone leaving the town and the community, like remembering them and not having any animosity towards them, but supporting them as they go far, go beyond what this town can offer. I think it's all very powerful. It's interestingly similar to the last album that we discussed, which is Townie, which is about a small town and the implications of growing up there and being part of that community. But yeah, what do you guys make of some of those themes? I think it's very rich, very relatable. There's kind of just this feeling of longing throughout the album. What do you guys make of that?
If I had to summarize it in one sentence, I would probably say that throughout this album, he explores the idea of isolation within togetherness.
Damn.
So the idea that
make an album, bro.
The idea that like there is a sense of isolation even when you are with people, and that can definitely happen. And there can be a sense of like being like far away from people, even when you are like very much in a town with other people. Everybody knows each other. It's a small town. And even like within your own homes, like there can definitely be that element of I feel like nobody really knows me, even though on paper everyone knows me.
Yeah.
So I would say that the reason that the album is so has that like energy of like that folksy energy and that kind of atmosphere of being this very almost spiritual kind of way of looking at life is because a lot of the themes that he is identifying and like looking at in this album are very, very, very much hidden almost within like the everyday life that we have together.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, George. And I think that isolation and togetherness is a great way to put that, because there are songs about love, like everything, Everywhere, Everything, which you touched on. There are songs about love and about togetherness that somehow still feel lonely. And that is a profound feeling. That's an interesting one.
To me, like I felt like the lone, like the isolation almost, but when I was hearing it, it didn't necessarily feel like it was like a burden,
right,
in some of the songs.
No,
you know, like he was almost content sometimes in the song. Like Homesick, of course, he feels like, you know, that's a sad song, he can't get out of there. But other ones, I don't know if it was just the way that the song overall sounded, you know, but it didn't necessarily feel depressing in the loneliness.
Yeah. Which
I think is very expertly done.
Totally.
And that's the end of that thought. And this is a segue.
It didn't feel depressing. That's what's really interesting to me. So this is something I wanted to touch on is Camille, my girlfriend, for the listener.
You're cheating on me.
Outed.
I just peaked that so hard.
Oh
my
God. Camille often pokes fun at me for liking very sad music, very depressing music, and George has even taken the occasional jab at my quote-unquote emo taste in music.
He's an emo. He was an emo for a very long time, if I'm being completely honest. Listener, you have no idea, but he really does not want to pull on this thread. Let's just say that.
No, I'll confess that I went through a phase of the all black clothes and the exclusively listening to very mellow music. I will confess. But that being said, and my Spotify personality last year was vampire, and it said I like dark atmospheric music. But that's neither here nor there. I think that what I find compelling in music is not sadness per se, and I think that's the distinction I want to make, is that there are songs that are very mellow, that evoke feelings that are nowhere near happy, but it doesn't make me sad to listen to it. I actually am very reluctant to listen to music that is explicitly sad. There are songs that are beautifully done, that are just straight up like about death or a breakup or heartbreak or loneliness or things of that nature, and when they're super explicit and just bleak and hopeless, I find that very difficult to listen to. So my taste in this sort of sadder side of music is like Stick Season is that perfect medium for me, where I don't feel hopeless. It doesn't feel desolate. It just feels
content almost.
Yeah, it's content. But there's also that feeling which I mentioned earlier of kind of longing.
Yeah.
Which isn't to me a negative feeling. I think you can long for greater things, and that in itself can be a beautiful feeling. It doesn't have to mean that what you have right now is like terrible.
Right. Yeah. No, I 100% understand what you're saying, and I think that's something, at least like what you were saying, like your taste in music, not during your emo phase, but like right now where it's like mellower stuff. You know, I know I hit on this earlier. But I think that's something I'm slowly discovering about myself, is that I mean, not explicitly sad music, but like music like this.
Yeah.
You know, where it feels just more personal and like as you said, you know, it I think that's a conclusion that the more I listen to music, the more I'm like, it's either not my style or it is my style. And all the ones that really are my style, my wild style. That's a Lego movie reference.
Oh, yeah. The special.
What a callback. The stuff that I find myself enjoying is stuff like this.
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't make me feel depressed or anything about it.
Right.
You know? It does make me think of, like, at least in, like, northern attitude. Like, I've longed to go, like, up north, you know? Not necessarily live in a big city, you know? Because, I mean, I'm used to St. Louis. St. Louis is a city, but it's not, like, Chicago or New York or anything.
Sure.
But, like, I've talked with you about, Keilan, at length about this, is that I want to live, like, right outside of, like, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
You know, where, like, it's just far away enough to where it feels a little bit more isolated, but it's still close enough to where it's not way out of the way to get back to civilization.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
And I feel a lot of that when I listen to a bunch of these songs.
Yeah.
You know, especially Northern Attitude because, you know, North.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. And this can kind of segue into my closing thoughts on the album before we do our last segment. But
Is this a segue?
boys, I think we're taking a Segway tour.
And before we segue, just real quick, I tend to listen. I tend to group the music that I listen to into the actual like emotions that I feel while I listen to them. So
Sure.
I actually have like a happy playlist. I have a sad playlist, and I also have a playlist that is specifically for contemplative music.
Yeah.
So music that I put on whenever there's something that I'm like thinking about, or whenever there's like something that I'm like actively doing, and it's music that if I could in theory zone out to it, but even if I were to like focus very, very hard on it, it would also provide me with that same backdrop to actually think and to do like a little bit of introspection, which I think that this album definitely fits into that category.
I have a very pressing follow-up question.
Oh, boy.
Is it pronounced contemplative?
Contemplative?
I've always said contemplative, but I might be completely wrong. You're shaking my world right now.
I believe that you could pronounce it both ways, but
Yeah, okay.
if you're looking for pronunciation or grammar in the English language, you're talking to English as a second language man right now.
Is it pronunciation or pronunciation?
It is definitely pronunciation.
Listen, it's whatever you want. I just like the way contemplative just rolls off the tongue. That's nice. Like, I don't know if it's accurate, but that's a good one. Contemplative.
All right, this
like
is
a-
a segue.
Oh wait, but yes, I wanted to. No, you're good. I wanted to hit on the northern points. I also feel, and I think all of us do to a degree, kind of this calling to the colder weather and the some of the attributes of some northern places. For me, it's Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is where.
Fine, don't live with me in Minneapolis.
No, listen, I'm a hop, skip, and a jump over. Milwaukee, for me, has beautiful falls. It has the breeze. It's on the lake. It has lovely winters. It's just cold enough for me without being overwhelmingly cold. It's something about going up north just really speaks to me. And this album, I just want to touch on. It first dropped the first version of the album dropped in 2022, fall of 2022, and I listened to this album all the time driving around Milwaukee in the fall, and for me it's just infused with those memories. And I think with it being somewhere that's a little more north, at least north from our perspective, it just holds a very special place in my heart because of that. It came out around Halloween time. There's just it really resonates with me because of that, the appeal of that northern nature. So.
Yeah, and to really drive home that northern longing that, I mean, at the very least, you and I seem to share, Keilan, is that I've often said that at some point in my life, like, bucket list item would be take a year and just go live up in, like, Juneau, Alaska.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's like that sheer cold. That's that stuff you got to wear a coat, like, every day, and you only get daylight for 3 hours at some points at some points of the year. But it's just... It's like the forests and the mountains and all of that. It just does it for me.
It does, dude.
You know? And I mean,
it's our white people genes, bro.
I'm
telling you.
Not the white people genes.
Well, for me, it's my Norwegian genes, bro. Because literally, like, when I went to Norway and it was like that. It was literally because I went to Bergen and Oslo in January, and it was, the sun just peaked over the horizon, then it went right back down, and it was cold and it was bitter, but I did feel at home there. I did feel, not only with the cultural heritage, but just the nature. I just felt like, yeah, this is where it's at for me. George, I know your Macedonian heritage leans a smidge warmer, but how do you feel about this topic?
To be honest, I think that a lot of the more cold environments are probably more associated with where there aren't people, and typically that's also what I'm looking for.
True.
Whenever I go to nature, whenever I go to nature, I'm not like, let's grab 30 people and all go into nature together. I typically want it to be more of a spiritual experience, but I also think that there is an element of bias to that, at least for me, because I am an engineer. I very much work pretty far from nature in my current line of work. So I probably idolize it a lot because I spend a lot of my day pretty far away from it.
Yeah.
Not saying that I don't value it. I think that I will always really value nature, and I absolutely love the environment, which definitely relates to like.
I thought you hated the environment.
No,
I thought you were anti-environment.
I'm pro-environment.
Okay, sure.
It relates to like what I've like what I studied in college and what I'm trying to do with my career. So
yeah,
it's very important to me. But I definitely relate more towards the aspect of getting away from people, rather than specifically the cold.
Yeah, like would you? Well, here, let me ask you this: how would you weight a tropical island where you're the only one there versus a cabin on a snowy mountain where you're the only one there?
I would definitely pick cabin on the snowy mountain.
Respect.
That aesthetic is top tier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love the idea of mountains. Macedonia is actually very mountainous.
Yes.
So it's very much a part of my, like, I don't know, inner psyche that I definitely love to let out whenever I can. This is why I always try to go skiing in the winters, and I always, if we don't go skiing, I always push. I pushed my family when I was younger, and now that I'm an adult, I will push myself to take time and just kind of exist in a more like mountainous kind of area, and I think that would be what I would say here. But
yeah, absolutely.
I think that this specific moment calls for a segue.
Oh no, he did.
He's leaning into it, folks.
Oh my God,
we're
we got
wearing
him
him down.
All right, Geef, you want to throw out a question for one of us?
I would say that it's important to put albums in perspective of the time in which they were written and the time in which they were released.
Indeed.
I don't think that it is possible to truly give.
You did not have to call me out like that. That was crazy.
I do believe that
Put albums in perspective, we must.
No.
we're going to get
No.
demonetized. I believe it's important when providing critical analysis to consider the environment in which art exists, because it is definitely not necessarily a function of its environment, but it definitely is influenced by the time in which it was written and definitely the time in which it was released.
For sure.
And observed by other people.
Yeah.
So my question for Keilan, I'll begin, is...
What? Damn, man.
Listener, I just psyched out Noah. My question for Keilan to begin would probably be, how do you think that the timing in which this album was released impacted both its creation and its reception by the audience?
Sure. Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you mention the time frame is that first single he released, Stick Season, directly mentions COVID. He says, Doc told me to travel, but there's COVID on the planes. And so I think that was an immensely relatable and very timely line that came, 2 years after the onset of the pandemic and kind of fed into a lot of our collective anxieties about life at that point. And I think that line still, when I hear it, it takes me back to that time and of like there was anxiety about being on public transit, and there was that just feeling of, because like Doc told me to travel, but there's COVID on the planes. Like, that line is sort of, I need, like, saying he needs to travel. Like, I need a release. I need something for my health, but also there's this massive health crisis in the world. And so I think a lot of us related to that, kind of balancing the personal with the global conflict. And I think a lot of us still do in various ways, but so that is the first thing that comes to mind. Also, the timing of the release of it being in fall, in stick season, also had to hit people a certain way, because I mean, there's no way to listen to that album in the fall and not feel struck with a very particular vibe. And like I said, that's what I think of when I listen to it, is that time of year. And so I would imagine that he wrote a lot of those songs during that time of year for him, maybe the year before, or maybe he was just reflecting on that time. But I think the timing of global events influenced it in that way, and I think the timing of the season influenced it in that way. And I think both were very beneficial to the album, having such a distinct feeling. And there's also lines I want to add. Like there's one in, I think it's Homesick, where he says, "The intersection got a target, and now they're calling it downtown." And I think that's kind of a fun line, but it's also very relatable in the sense of we're all kind of living in this time of expansion, and like the small towns that I visit, that my family lives in, there is always kind of that feeling of now they're adding a target, or now they're kind of making it bigger, they're doing this or that, and I think that is also kind of timely in terms of where we are as a country, as a society. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Hey, Noah Boeyink, let me ask you a question.
Sir.
Okay, well first let me say this. Actually, I want to throw out one more thing regarding the longing piece, because I wrote a question about it, but now I feel like you've kind of already answered it. But I watched this TED Talk one time about this woman who had kind of a similar dilemma of listening to sad music and unsure why it always resonated with her so much, and she tied it back to this quote from C.S. Lewis that speaks to what he calls the inconsolable longing for we know not what. And it actually is the way she describes it, like this very spiritual longing, where we all kind of have a longing for something greater, which is maybe for some religious folks is like it kind of speaks to the idea of there being a heaven or a place beyond. But I think in many spiritual regards, it might speak to enlightenment or something else. But we do kind of have this longing within all of us for something better. And in moments of happiness, we have almost a twinge of sadness. I don't know if you two relate to this, but a twinge of sadness that like this moment won't last. Like this isn't forever. But and she talks about how some of the music that we sing to like babies, like lullabies, have sad undertones, and it's like, you know,
Ring Around the Rosie is crazy.
Well, that's on another level, but just that there is this kind of underlying longing, and I guess I actually will tie this back to a question, because we talked about the longing for nature and for like the North and that sort of thing, but like how else in your life do you relate to this sort of longing? Because to me, when I heard that interview or that TED Talk, it really struck me, and this album feels like a prime example of that. So do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's always an essence of longing for, something, I don't want to say better, but like different, like what's the best way to phrase this? Keilan, you and I have talked about this. It might have even been on the podcast. I don't remember. That like if I were to change an aspect about my life, what would it be? And I'd be like the amount I get to travel, because I don't travel around the world at all. I've never been out of the United States, and the farthest west I've been is Denver. Yeah. So like I'm not necessarily well traveled, and that's the one thing that I would change. But I know that if I was traveling all the time, I would long for a place to stay, to have one solid place.
Let him cook, listener.
And so, I mean, longing for something is all about the perspective that you have
Yeah.
on the situation that you are currently in and what you're longing for from that situation. You know, like I've always lived in St. Louis. I've never known anywhere else to be home, you know, and so St. Louis gets really hot.
Dude, it was 97 when we walked in today.
Yes, and I drive an all black car with no AC and one of the windows doesn't roll down. I'm thriving in the heat.
That is I'm so sorry.
That truly sucks.
So there's a lot of things that I'm, you know, longing for that aren't necessarily, you know, big things, but tying back to this album and everything, you know, it specifically makes me really want to fulfill that dream of either taking a year and living in a much cooler environment. Wow. Environment.
Yeah.
Or somewhere just a little bit more isolated. Because, like I said, I've only ever lived in, like, more densely populated places than somewhere, like, out in the woods.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I kind of forgot the essence of your question. But
No, you're good.
I think I kind of hit on the main point of it.
Yeah, you totally did. That's an interesting idea that what we long for, because it's so hard to quantify, it tends to be what we don't have, and yet that's completely dependent on who we are.
Right, and the experience that we've had. Yes.
Right. It's completely relative. That's a really good point. Yeah.
A bit of a grass is always greener on the other side kind of deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we can long for whatever we want. I mean, like George said, grass is always greener. It might not necessarily be what we need, but we won't know that until we get there.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I think it doesn't hurt to have something to long for. I think if you're completely, I mean, not to like say that contentment is a bad thing, but I think having dreams, that sounds pretty cliche, but having something that you aspire to, something that gives you that sense of yearning, I think is kind of a cool thing.
If nothing else, it's motivation.
Yeah. I don't think I'd want to lose that ever necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good talk.
Absolutely.
George, you haven't answered a question yet.
How about a last rapid fire deep question, then we close this one out, boys?
Let's do it.
All right. So, in the song Halloween, there are a few lines that say, and I quote, I'm losing myself in the tiniest objects. I'm seeing my life on a screen. I'm hearing your voice in a strange foreign language. If only I learned how to speak.
God, I fucking love that verse.
Listener, this man brought textual evidence.
I better see that cited in MLA format.
It's not even in quotation marks. So in what way do you feel like those lyrics could apply to you personally? Yeah. You take a look. You can zoom in if you want to.
I just want to interject. I love the way the strings come in the song when he says that. It just like gets me every time. Good God.
This man's having both a rough and a great time over there. I don't know what to do.
I would say that I can definitely relate a lot to seeing my life on a screen. I work with computers pretty much all day, and even though
the literal approach, okay,
yeah, even though I do my best to kind of step away and make sure that my life is a little bit more than like everything is online, everything is like connected to the internet. Either I'm streaming a show, I'm listening to music, I'm like doing something related to like a screen and technology. I would say that I definitely struggle sometimes with doing that. I think today I'm up to 10 hours of screen time. So that is, and listener, by the way, it is barely been 10 hours in the day. So it's definitely something that I think about. And in terms of seeing myself in the tiniest objects, I think that a lot of times
Losing yourself, George.
We threw him off. Oh, no.
In terms of losing yourself in the tiniest objects, I would say that this kind of relates more generally to the entire and to the entire stanza, which is more about the idea of living your life in like a daze or like a haze, or like not really taking the moment to cut through all of the noise and cut through all of the like the minuscule and the little things, and really kind of get down to the important and the happiest parts of life. Mm-hmm. I think that is what Noah Kahan's talking about when he says, I'm hearing your voice in a strange foreign language, and like in that way of like the kind of haze that appears if you kind of lose focus on the present and you lose focus on your day-to-day. So
just watching your own life go by.
I would definitely say that is something that I can definitely relate to. It's because something that I personally try to address every single day, and it relates a lot to stuff that I've learned in Copenhagen. While I was taking I studied abroad, and I took a class about happiness, and in it, one of the most profound things that we learned was a thought from, I believe it was Camus, who said, happiness is a rebellion. It's something that you have to take like an active role in. Totally. And you really have to focus on it, not necessarily making it your objective, but making it something that you are actively trying to focus on the elements of happiness that appear in the everyday life, and you're not getting lost in that kind of haze of the day-to-day.
Yeah, I agree. If I could just add something on, I think something that I've learned in some of my own research is that we as humans are kind of conditioned to look for the negative, and that's actually that's like a survival mechanism. And George, I'm sure you know a bit about this as a as a
trained engineer.
Yeah, exactly.
as a biomedical engineer,
Noah. But yeah, we sort of have a negativity bias, and then we're always looking for things that are bad, things that are dangerous, things that pose a threat to us, and it is not really in our nature, in our conditioning, to seek out that which is beautiful and that which is good. And so to do so, I like that philosophical point that it actually is a rebellion against the kind of conditioning and the sort of the haze that we can live in, especially with how addictive social media is and how we're always just living our life through screens. Like, it's so easy to get stuck in those cycles, and it's so easy to not ever really step back and take a look at our behavior and take a look at the patterns that we find ourselves in. And so, yeah, like seeing myself in the tiniest objects for me, like, or losing myself, like
my God, he did it too.
That lyric.
Let's ridicule him.
That lyric to me speaks to like finding beauty in the mundane and taking, for lack of a better expression, taking time to smell the flowers, taking time to look at the trees, taking time to look at the smallest object and see the beauty in it. I think it's it borders on the cliche, but it's a beautiful sentiment that I think we could all do better at. Anyways, boys, I think it's about that time for this undisclosed establishment that we're recording at to shut down. So we ought to save our file and ship it off. Don't you boys think so?
Yes, at this St. Louis Central Branch location of the public library.
My God.
All right, boys. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Listener, thank you for joining in. This is one of my all-time favorite albums. So glad we got to listen to it on our drive yesterday and have this talk. This got even deeper than I anticipated, and I'm thankful for what we discussed. So
always good to have deep talks with the boys.
Absolutely. All right, peace out, listener. We'll see you on the next episode of The Everything Club.
Thank y'all for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.